To perceive the true meaning of life, we must develop the ability to observe and understand issues deeply. Observing and recognizing problems requires wisdom to be clear, like a lamp shining brightly. If wisdom is only like a dim light, we cannot properly perceive the essence of things. Clear wisdom is a prerequisite, and there's no substitute for it. No matter where we go or what we do in life, if we lack the ability to see issues clearly, we will never find the true meaning of our existence. Right view is the manifestation of clear wisdom. We need to perceive issues with clarity and thoroughness. Fortunately, this is a skill that can be cultivated. Without the light of wisdom, we easily fall into confusion, unable to distinguish right from wrong. You may be very kind, but if you lack the guiding light of wisdom, that kindness may lead to negative consequences. We often see the phenomenon of a good person gradually becoming corrupted over time, simply because they have made wrong choices. Just one mistake can lead to actions that cause harm. To develop clear wisdom, the first step is to practice critical thinking, the ability to view issues from multiple perspectives. You know, when people speak one-sidedly and we immediately believe them, that is superstition. Being gullible means nodding in agreement with whatever we hear. Instead, when receiving information from one perspective, we must bravely examine other dimensions of the issue. If they present only one side, we must ask ourselves, what about the other three sides? It's like a book with 4 edges. If someone only talks about one edge, where are the other 3? Pay attention, especially in business and shopping. Sellers often close a sale by highlighting 1 or 2 advantages of a product. But what about the disadvantages? They skillfully omit them. Then, when we bring the product home, we realize, so that's how it is. But by then, it's too late. The item has been purchased, no returns allowed, case closed. We must train ourselves to have a multi-dimensional perspective. We must practice questioning even what we are learning. This is not a new concept. 2,600 years ago, the Buddha, an enlightened being, taught, do not believe something just because it is passed down orally. Do not believe it just because it is tradition, and do not believe it simply because it is rumored. This means that as we sit here, we have the right to doubt this very curriculum. We have the right to question what we are listening to. However, we must distinguish between 2 types of doubt. Why are we doubting? Are we doubting to deeply understand the issue, or are we doubting to create distance between us? In life, we often doubt in ways that lead to division. Think about it. When a husband comes home late from work, why do we doubt him? Is it to make the relationship fall apart faster and lead to an argument? In meetings, we sometimes doubt out of jealousy. When someone reports good results, we question them not to seek the truth but to assert our own ego, to diminish others rather than to build something together. Thus, the Buddha's advice to not believe blindly is not about fostering negative skepticism, but rather about encouraging us to seek understanding to clarify issues and develop true wisdom. When someone presents one side of an issue, we should not rush to believe it. We do not need to outright reject them, but we should withhold belief until we have observed other perspectives. Only when we have considered all 4 sides and synthesized them should we believe. In the scriptures, the Buddha tells the story of blind men touching an elephant. One touches its leg and says it feels like a pillar. Another touches its ear and says it is like a fan. Another touches its trunk and says it is like a leech. And another touches its belly and says it is like a boat. They argue because each one only perceives a single aspect. Our task is not to argue with others, but to listen attentively without immediately believing. We must listen deeply, observe keenly, and then synthesize a comprehensive understanding. Do not believe blindly means just that. It is not about asking intrusive, jealous questions like, where were you? Who were you with? Why did you go drinking? Such questions stem from jealousy and insecurity. The more we question like this, the more relationships deteriorate. We must be mindful of this. Now, let's take a closer look at the word doubt, or not believing blindly. Consider addiction. It is commonly understood as the result of addictive chemicals, such as heroin or cocaine. This viewpoint comes from early 20th century experiments in which rats were placed alone in a cage and given 2 water bottles, one with plain water and the other mixed with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time the rats chose the drug-laced water, drinking until they died. However, in the 1970s, Professor Bruce Alexander discovered an important factor that previous experiments overlooked: the living environment. He built Rat Park, a well-equipped environment with toys, tunnels, and other rats for social interaction. In this environment, the rats rarely drank the drug-laced water, and none became addicted or overdosed. This showed that addiction is influenced by the environment, not just by chemical substances. This experiment applies not only to rats but also to humans. During the Vietnam War, 20% of American soldiers used heroin, raising fears that when they returned home, there would be a wave of addiction sweeping through society. However, 95% of these soldiers quit heroin without needing rehabilitation. Why? Once they returned to their families and friends, they no longer needed heroin to cope with loneliness or stress. This proves that addiction is not just a chemical issue, but also depends on environment and relationships. Humans have a natural instinct for connection. When we are happy and healthy, we connect with those around us. But when we are hurt, isolated, or struggling, we often turn to temporary comforts like phones, pornography, gambling, drugs, or any other addictive behaviors. In fact, since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has significantly declined, while house sizes have increased. Modern society encourages isolation and prioritizes material wealth over relationships. The nearly century-long war on drugs has only worsened the problem. Instead of helping addicts recover, we push them to the margins of society, making it harder for them to find jobs, losing their support networks, and ultimately landing in prison, a literal cage. To truly address addiction, we need to change our approach. Instead of focusing on punishment and control, we must create supportive environments that foster human connections, much like Professor Alexander's Rat Park. This requires rebuilding healthy relationships and rediscovering the value of social connection. The opposite of addiction is not self-discipline, it is connection.